Oops.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
This is Scott Harrison. I'm the artistic director with Ironweed Productions, and I want to welcome you to our next segment of Talking Theater Live. I'm here with Santa Fe actor and musician Freddy Lopez. Freddy, thanks so much. Looking forward to this.
Me too.
So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Talking Theater Live is a series of 30-minute conversations between myself and theater artists in Santa Fe, just talking about the different artists' experiences and the paths that they've taken to creating theater in Santa Fe. So without further ado, I'd love to just jump in, Freddie. And actually, I'd just love to start from the beginning and see do you remember kind of the very first time as a kid, or when you were kind of just captured by the imagination or play acting or telling stories?
Yeah, probably so, I think, because I started out as a child. Well, see, the thing is, my brother and sister were like roughly 10 years older than me, right? Uh-huh. So I was kind of like an oops, and I was like their experiment, and they used to dress me up. Like, so this was early 60s, right, when I was a little kid, and they used to dress me up, like, and Freddie was a little cowboy, the little Indian, and we lived in a rural, where there was cotton fields around us, and this was in Las Cruces, New Mexico, in Doñana County, and so it was kind of rural, we had some farm animals, and they'd put me on the goat and watch me fall off and stuff, so maybe that was like where I, got my first idea of maybe, and because they used to shoot 8mm of me. And I've seen some of that, I'm like, I don't remember that. I was like, oh, I get it. You guys are like having fun with little Freddy, So that's true. I was acting out in front of that 8mm camera because I remember it was always around.
Oh, cool.
Back then, there was no sound, so but they still shot home movies.
Oh, and so were there any of your other siblings? Did any of them kind of take up the theater?
No,
by theater books?
None. No. So that might have been, where I might be acting out some stuff. That's early,
Right.
But some people that I know, and this goes with musicians too, like you always hear those stories of how, I picked up my first guitar at 3, and things like that. I didn't, I didn't really do any theater in school until high school,
And how did that kind of get?
And that was like an accident too, because I remember being late as usual to go register for classes, and this was like my junior year. Junior. I get mixed up. Wait a minute. See, there's freshman, sophomore, junior. Yeah, junior. To register, and you have your electives, and you have the classes you have to take, like math and whatnot, and so, but the electives, I was like trying to take the ones I wanted to take, and the only thing that was left was theater and Spanish class, right? That was all that was left, and I was like, I'll take it, and that's how I ended up in the theater class, quite frankly. It wasn't like I was looking forward to it, or was already wanting to study it or whatever. And I ended up in this theater class with having no idea what I was going to get involved in, and quickly realized that it was really, really good for me.
And what was the first
to do that,
what kind of was the initial draw, or what were you kind of most drawn to with theater?
One of the things I remember is that what was it in Mice of Men of Steinbeck's? I remember that she would tape like an X to the back of the wall and an X over there, and we were to get behind the podium when we could read it or memorize it, and do one character here and one character here. So I was doing George here and Lenny here,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and she gave me a great grade, but she took me aside and she said, "It's not a comedy." So I must have done it like a comedy. I thought Lenny was funny, man.
Yeah, man, that's some good, funny stuff. Come on.
So I started off like that in a way, and but then she also that teacher, that was the only class I had in high school, a drama class.
Yeah.
And then she asked me if I would like to be in one of the the school plays, and that's where I did my first live theater.
Right.
And I was an ant.
Excellent. Do you remember the play?
No, I don't remember the name. All I remember, I was an ant.
That's excellent.
We were ants. This isn't like grade school, So anyway, I was an ant.
Did you guys talk, or did you have voices, or?
I think I spoke in numbers. I think we're going to have to Google this, what play
has
ants and they spoke in numbers.
Oh, but you were totally bit by the bug the first time.
Bit by the bug.
Bit by the ant the first time.
Yeah, I was. Plus, I remember that all my friends were athletes. They were playing football and basketball, and I tried football. I was okay, but I wasn't that great. And and I remember busting my knee during high school, and so there I was, couldn't play anymore. And then that's when I ended up in this drama class, and not because of the busted knee. That was because I was late to, so my friends were like, they were the jocks, and they would, go to the park and smoke pot and drink their beer and go to their parties, whatever it was. Yeah. And which is cool. That's what I was doing too when I was hanging out with them. But then I ended up with the drama club, right? With the actors in high school, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up at the affluent girls' indoor swimming pool party.
Oh, and then that
was more fun than hanging out with jocks.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah. That's true,
Yeah.
So you get bit by the bug like that, Well, there's always that saying where, why did you start playing rock and roll? Oh, it's because the girls.
Right. Right.
It was like that in drama too, though, in a way,
Yeah.
Even though I didn't know I was going to head there, and the girls were really nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
We drama people.
Yeah.
They undress in front of you, no problem, You don't mind, do you?
That's right. No, that's right. We're all together.
Yeah.
We're all in the same dressing room.
I'm used to being in the dressing room with a bunch of football players,
So you, what happened then after high school? How did your theater journey continue on from there?
Yeah. After high school, there was, it was interesting. I was working at the phone company. I was a long distance operator. And
where was
in El Paso?
Okay.
Yeah, and all of this whole part is in El Paso.
Yeah.
So we jumped from Las Cruces cotton fields to later, and then I met this girl she was one of the operators, and I overheard her talking about theater,
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't done any theater until then, and I overheard her talking about theater and how she was in a play, and then we got to talking, and she said, maybe you might want to come and audition, because I told her I was kind of that I did something in high school, so I did. I went, and it was community theater, and I remember it was like your what do you call it, the community theater. Like the Playhouse here in Santa Fe, your community theater. And it was on Montana Street near downtown, I remember that. And I would just go in there and knock on the door and ask them if there was anything to audition for. It wasn't like I looked it up online. We didn't have that then.
Yeah, you just...
I just would go and like looking for a job.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, but you can clean the toilets. I was like, nah, not past.
That's right.
But we ended up cleaning the toilets anyway as actors, But my dad just asked me, why do you have to clean the toilets? Oh, Dad, we got to keep the theater clean.
People,
yeah. And I would go, and I ended up in this play called Tell Me You Love Me, Junie Moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. All you listeners will.
That's right.
And
Google it now.
so Tell Me You Love Me, Junie Moon. I forget who wrote it.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was one of those plays that, like, you know, tugs at your heart, and you end up crying at the end because everybody had a problem in that play, you know. I remember that one of the actresses that did it, like, on Broadway or off Broadway was, what's her name? What's Judy Garland's daughter's name?
Oh, Liza Minnelli?
I think she did it.
Really?
When she was younger.
Yeah.
And she was Junie Moon. And, but anyway, this is El Paso. That had nothing to do with her, but like the parts in the play where one guy had a progressive neurological disease, you know, and he would have seizures, and the other guy was a paraplegic in a wheelchair, and the other guy had some other problem. It kind of took place in a hospital setting or in some kind of a home. Yeah. And you know, I got to play the part of the guy with the progressive neurological disease, and I die at the end. So, you know,
got the big dramatic.
Yeah, got everybody crying. Yeah. But that is where I really got the bug, because that was the first, like, real theater situation that I was involved in. Yeah. And I remember that well, with, like, that's where I got the bug. That's where I started to act, you know. Nice. I wanted to know more. Yeah. So I started reading up on it or taking, you know, workshops. I never went to school. Didn't take in college or anything, you know, for theater. I might show, but that's where I got it. Gosh. After high school. Yeah. And it was a big deal. It caught on, and it was sold out houses.
Oh, the show. Oh, yeah. Wow, cool.
It was sold out houses, and it was a big deal. Yeah. You know, so that was neat.
Do you remember kind of what the feeling was, just kind of being on stage? Just kind of that rush.
Yes. Yeah. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah. Also forgetting lines.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yeah. Like forgetting lines and having to
figure it out.
Improvise or you know, so it connects. Yeah. You know, for the other actors. Right. That was tricky, and I had to learn that on my own. You know. Yeah,
man, that's like. Yeah, it's hard to describe for people that don't have that feeling of panic when you're on stage and suddenly
it's horrible.
You can't remember what your next line, you know?
You can't, and it's live.
Yeah,
you know, you can't do another take.
Yeah, I know. It's like
can we stop there? We'll do another take.
Start again? Yeah. Oh, that's it. Now, so when you
except I did do that live once.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Where was that? Well, no, where was that?
It was in Santa Fe. Kent Kirkpatrick directed me in a show years back, and it was a spoof on Santa Fe, and it was called It Happened in Santa Fe, and they asked me, of course, to play the Indian, and I was like some kind of shaman, and there was this secret tunnel. This is all fiction. It was I forget the guy's name who wrote it. Anyway. It was a local guy who wrote it, and Kent directed it. And he had already knew me from something else. And he was like, want you to play this shaman character. And we spoofed everybody. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was Debbie Jaramillo. Mm-hmm. We spoofed her and her husband. You know, today we'd probably be spoofing the governor and her husband. Mm-hmm. And just all the different things that were going on in Santa Fe then. So we spoofed actually what was going on, you know. Yeah. And the thing was about you know, flubbing a line. Yeah. I remember I was going from point A to B, and I had this line. Uh-huh. It was a really small theater. Where was it? It was like the performance space, I think, over there on Montezuma, like where the Jean Cocteau is.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? Uh-huh. I think it was there. Uh-huh. And like I forgot I flubbed that line. I had a line. I'm walking across the stage, and I totally blew it. Mm-hmm. Just didn't make that much sense. And the actors are looking at me like, "What are you gonna do now?" You know. And I looked at them, and but here my character could do the character, the shaman. He could go, and everybody would freeze. Now that was written in where I would, and then I would like talk to the audience, and then go back. Okay.
Nice, yeah.
So that was written in. Yeah. So when I flubbed my line, I went, and everybody had to freeze. They had to freeze. So they all froze, but they're like trying to keep from laughing, you know. And they froze, and I looked at the audience. I said, "Let's try that again." And I went back and redid the line.
That's great.
See, I got to do that once.
That's a great story. Oh, my God.
Yeah, they said, "Don't do that again." Yeah.
That's great.
So,
And now that was that was in Santa Fe. And when was it that you came to Santa Fe? Did you come to Santa Fe from El Paso? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When was that?
That was like early 80s. So that was around, I came to 79, 80 is when I hit Santa Fe.
What was the theater scene like then? What was it?
I don't know. It was
just,
I wasn't that involved with the theater scene, you know.
Yeah.
And then I saw this ad in a paper in the New Mexican, and they were doing this actors lab thing at the Armory Theater, right? Mm-hmm. And it was Miguel Sandoval and his wife Linda. Mm-hmm. He grew up here, and he's a known actor. He's done some television shows. Everybody knows Miguel. A lot of people know him in L.A. and a lot of people here. And anyway, it was great. They were great directors, but there was a lab. There was a lot of improv. Mm-hmm. We had to improv all this stuff, you know. And I saw that in the paper, mm-hmm. and they were just looking for actors. That's when, like I said, there wasn't a Facebook or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. There was social networks.
Yeah.
So I saw that in the paper, and I thought I'd go try out for it. I was nervous as hell. I was so nervous. I hadn't done much.
About the improv? Was it
the
improv?
Yeah. And then when we started doing it, it just started to click, and we had a lot of fun. And it turned into, we called it Santa Fe Charm. And we got that name from the classified ads, where you would say, the houses that were for sale, they had Santa Fe Charm.
Oh yeah.
So that we called it that, right?
Yeah.
And Denise, she wrote it. Writer from Las Cruces. Hey, got my notes here.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see here. I did write it down. Denise Chavez. She was like the writer there, watching us and taking notes, and that's how they put it together.
So they develop a script based on what you guys
on our improv.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And I ended up playing the old man, who was based on my grandparents, and his name was Benito Sierra. Uh-huh. And he was like the guy that wore a hat like this and the Wellington boots and the khaki pants, and his fingers were yellow from rolling his own cigarettes.
Oh, gosh.
And you used to see him on the plaza all the time, these old men.
Yeah.
It was like the coffee club. They would sit there on the benches in Santa Fe and, talk, tell their World War II or I stories, you know. They were there. Man. That's the guys I based that character on, And my grandfather was like that in Las Cruces.
Interesting.
Yeah. He had the LBJ Stetson, those guys. Yeah. And they were Mexican-American, Hispanic. That's what I based it on, And there was some comedy in it and whatnot. And then I read later that it was taken to, or I knew back then, a theater company in Albuquerque, Teatro something, I forgot what their name was back then. They took it to that what's that Scottish theater festival?
Oh,
that one. Yeah. It's famous, right?
Yeah.
It's well known. Mm-hmm. They took that play there with these same characters, but they changed the name to Plaza. It was called Plaza. Like it took place because the play took place on the plaza, on Santa Fe Plaza.
Yeah.
But originally it was Santa Fe Charm.
Mm-hmm. Oh man.
Edinburgh or something.
Edinburgh. Edinburgh. Yeah.
And they took that there.
Man.
But I wasn't part of that. But it
was based on what you guys had created.
We were the original creators of that.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy improv? I mean,
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just like that thing with they let me that was improv.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
Do you do it any? I mean, have you done any recently? Are there any venues that you've been able to do?
What did we do?
The creating
a scene in a restaurant. There was a little bit of improv there. Remember?
That's true. Yeah,
remember?
That's true.
Yeah. That was really interesting, folks. Is got to include you too. Because that was interesting because it was in a live piece in the Second Street Brewery. Second Street Brewery rail yards where we did it.
Yeah.
When was that last year?
It was last November of 2016. Yeah.
Oh, wow, it's been that long already.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do it with you, because it was that kind of improv in a way. Even though it was written, it was memorized and scripted, but remember, we could be a little loose about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was that sense with the, because we didn't know what the audience was going to be like.
Yeah.
That sense that something new might happen.
And the audience was right there next to us.
Right.
Like they didn't know it was going to happen from table to table.
Right.
But every scene took place at a different table. Right?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
How it would, one would end, another one would start. And there was no special lighting. We didn't need it.
Right.
Remember?
Right.
That was really interesting to me.
It was fun. It was really fun to work on and to watch how it developed. What was it like for you
Especially
to
getting a beer thrown in my face.
Exactly.
For real.
Although it was non-alcoholic.
That's true.
But it was, in fact,
It was NA, I think. It still did a little tingle in my eyes.
Now, what was that like? What was that like to perform amidst? Because you were sitting at your table, just talking with people before the show started,
right?
So and
people didn't know. People didn't know.
What was that like?
Well, that was really interesting. I loved it because I knew that someone. Because I go there. That's at a restaurant, a pub I go to and have a beer and something to eat. I play music there. Yeah. So people would go, "Hey, Freddy, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Good to see you too. Shut up, I'm going to play." But I couldn't tell them that. Or they would say, "Can we sit with you?" No.
Yeah.
I'm busy. We're talking business. Couldn't let them sit with us, right? Because we had something to do here. But Freddy's rude. But that was interesting because I was chomping at the bit to get get our thing going.
Yeah, you all had a while before your scene.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, because I know when we were rehearsing that, because it was written by Bruce King, the piece that you all did.
You mean at the restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, I also did a piece that Bruce King wrote. That was the what was it called? That was the one with Wes Studi that I had done years back. Wolf in Camp. Yeah.
And did you do that here in Santa Fe?
Yeah, that was at the Armory Theater.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and what's his name? Wayne Sabato.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He co-directed it with Bruce, and Bruce wrote it. It was one of those playwright things where you win the contest and they produce your play.
Yeah.
I did a couple of those. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So
I did Lotto, and I did Wolf in Camp. And that's actually where I got to work with Wes Studi live. And that was a great play. That was really a lot of fun.
Wow.
A lot of fun. Because it started off, if I can make this short, it started off with the audience is watching what they think is a theater piece, mm-hmm. right? A play. Mm-hmm. And we're Native Americans, or as Russell Means would say, American Indian. He doesn't like Native American. So anyway, he's right. Yeah. Anyway, so we had like the outfits on. I had like the big bonnet on that comes down the back, and we were all dressed in native outfits mm-hmm. and buckskin and whatnot. And you, the audience, you think that Wolf in Camp is this play with Indians. You're watching them do their thing, and then all of a sudden, I'll never forget, one of us starts flubbing our lines, just messing them up. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think it was me, because I remember I got to rip off that bonnet. Yeah. I screwed up my lines, and then someone else goes, "Can't you remember anything?" or something like that. And then you see me go, "God dang it!" and I take that bonnet off and throw a fit, like a prima donna fit. And then you realize, oh, they're in rehearsal.
Right.
They're in rehearsal.
Oh, that's cool.
And then actually real time starts to take over.
Yeah.
That's a great way to start.
Oh,
fool the audience at first, It was a comedy.
Yeah.
It was good.
So is the whole premise of the play kind of around a rehearsal then? Is that
No. Well, I think so. I'm trying to remember. Yeah. And then Wes's part was he was like the he played like the director guy, or he was in the audience when he says his first lines. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Okay, that's good, but you got to do it more like this, or whatever." He was like the director. It was like you watching,
right?
But then he was also like the nemesis of he was the devil. Mm-hmm. you know, and we were his puppets, you know. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Something like that, the way I remember it. I remember it's getting worse.
Well, who's I joined the kind of another feeling. Who are some of the other people that you've worked with that you've just kind of really, you know, admired the opportunity,
Well,
the opportunity to work with them?
Like from the beginning with Miguel and Linda, that was really good because see, I got the bug back in El Paso, and then I hadn't done much of anything for years, and then I came back. I mean, I moved here, and then I was like, you know, you just want to do it again. So I did. And then I met these people and worked with them and met more people because of that. And then I was involved in a play, and David Ross was our director. And we did that at, I think, where was that? That was also above the Jean Cocteau Theater where it is now. There was a space above. I think that was called the performance space. And it really wasn't a theater. There was just like folding chairs, and you would build yourself a stage, like a raked stage. And it was A Fortune in Men's Eyes. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't know that one.
It was a prison play. So the set was a prison cell. Yeah. And we did it like shortly after that, the prison riot that took place at the Santa Fe prison, and that was one of the worst in the country to date. You know, like horrible things happened there, and to the guards and to other prisoners and to snitches and whatnot, and they did horrible things to each other. But this was a play. I think it was Canadian, and it dealt with that prison life. Is what it dealt with. So it was fresh on people's minds because we actually had this happen in our, within the last year or so. So it was effective in that way. But then it also became a pretty big hit, I mean, everybody in town came to see it. And and that like relit me up again, when you're in something like that. When all the chemistry came together with all the actors. That's where I met John Oldak, Doran, what's first name? Anyway, not Cliff. That's his brother. Doug Doran was in it, and we met there, and just the chemistry between all of us was powerful. It was really powerful in a tiny space. Tiny space. There was a big fight scene where they beat the shit out of me. Because I played the weakest link in the play, and I played Mona. Because of the way I looked, I guess, the way I smiled and whatnot, and didn't really look like Mona. It was just kind of like that was my nickname in prison, and for different reasons. And so I get the shit beat out of me, and I remember coming up because I would do the makeup underneath the cot to myself. So you don't see me; you just see them doing this. But while they're doing that, I'm doing myself up to look like I'm beat up, putting cotton balls in my mouth with chocolate and red food coloring. That always works. It tastes good too. But it looks like blood, know. And we would get the mixture right and shooting. And I remember coming up from behind the bench, and this is live theater. And there were some ladies in the audience that were yelling, "Stop, stop." They thought it was real. They thought it was real,
my gosh,
So when you get affect an audience like that,
that's amazing.
Of course you don't stop, but And there was like a Q&A afterwards with real ex-cons and stuff. It was more than theater.
Gosh.
And it really was like part of this healing process for the community. David Ross, he got us. I'll never forget. He got us a tour in that prison because the new prison wasn't built yet. Okay, so the old prison was still being in use, and he got us a tour in there, right? Just to walk around, with their permission, of course. And of course, the low security guys were wandering around and stuff, but the high security, we couldn't even go in there. But I don't know if I can say this on camera. I guess I can. It's harmless. He got us, I don't know, but he got us in there to take a tour,
Wow.
And that was effective.
Really powerful.
That was effective. I guess I'm skipping how he got us in there because I don't want to. But we did get to take a tour in there.
Wow.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. I guess I can. It was kind of like Cuckoo's Nest, the movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Remember when Nicholson takes them out on the boat as doctors?
Yeah.
And this is Dr. So-and-so, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of like that because he told them that we were teachers. That's how he got us in.
Interesting.
But no, we were actors snooping around, you know. And but it was harmless. We didn't do anything bad or anything. We didn't even get to talk to any of the prisoners. They gave us a quick tour.
Yeah.
It was like, this is where this happened. They wouldn't do that now.
That must have been powerful, though. Gosh.
To be in there in a real live prison. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I've been in there since it was empty. The old prison. Because of movie sets. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in there.
Yeah.
And then to link, what was I going to say? To link, what was this? That was, what did I say that was? Was that Wolf? No, that was of Fortune in Men's Eyes, which is, Of Fortune in Men's Eyes is the title of a Shakespeare sonnet.
Huh, yeah.
But there was only one line of Shakespeare in there.
Yeah.
Where it was read like from a book, and that was my part. It wasn't a Shakespeare play.
Right.
And
it's a beautiful title.
And that's where I met Doug Doran and worked with him. And then years later, he asked me if I wanted to direct a play with him in it. And I had never directed ever. And that's when we did an Oscar Rodriguez's play called. Referring to my notes again. Where was this? Coyote Blues. And
you directed that?
And I directed that at the Santa Fe Playhouse.
How did you enjoy directing?
I wasn't in it at all. I just directed. And that was a trip. I had no education on how to direct except from being in plays. Yeah.
Did you enjoy it, though?
Yeah, I did. I really did.
Yeah. How did you... I don't know, were there things about... Because I know for me, like,
it was
it
was a two-character play.
Yeah.
There was only two characters in it, and it took place in an adobe house in like Taos.
Huh.
Yeah, it was a man and a woman.
Yeah.
And I think there was 2 acts. Go ahead.
Wow. No. Well, it's just when you directing, were there certain things that you learned about acting from the experience?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. No, I sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Because now I was in a different position.
Right.
You know. It was kind of difficult for me, you know. I felt because I had no education on that stuff, you know. So I just swung it.
What part of the process directing did you enjoy the most? Like working with the actors, or?
Especially that, because for that play though, Doug, it was almost like it was written for him. He was perfect in that role, and Pilar was perfect as well. There wasn't that much I could tell him, you know. And I also avoided not saying do it like this. Yeah. They need to figure it out, you know. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And let them figure it out. And so there was a lot of that, of letting them figure it out. And if they had issues, I would just go, I don't know, you figure it out, you know. But because I really wanted them to figure it out, you know. But I would give them ideas. You know?
Oh yeah.
I would. Yeah.
Have you directed since? Do you do?
No, I never did. Not that I didn't want to. I just haven't.
You just haven't.
Yeah. And it was interesting building the sets. Yeah. Because I had worked in movies, so I was a prop guy in set dressing and prop guy on film. So I knew all these people in town. So when the theater asked me for like some kind of a budget that I needed for the sets, I gave them zero budget. Because they were like, wait a minute, how come you don't need any money? You know, we're almost zero budget. And I was like, well, I got the flats for free. I got the furniture for free. I got the paintings on the wall for free. I got the props for free because I borrowed them from everybody.
Yeah,
that's something
cool.
I learned from David Ross. Because, like, I went to what's it called, the Jackalope on Cerritos, and I knew the owner back then, Darby. And I said to him, I said, hey, I'm doing this play. And he knew me. And I said, but I'm wondering if I could get some of that furniture that you have outside that's out in the rain and the sun, getting all beat up and nobody wants to buy it because, and he goes, what are you getting at, Freddie? And I said, well, how about I give you credit in the program that I got the furniture from Jackalope? And he goes, take it. He was like, take it.
That's,
just come and get what you need.
Yeah.
That's where I got my furniture,
Yeah.
because it was just furniture they didn't care that much about. It wasn't expensive. It was patio furniture, but it was nice and woody, and it worked perfect as indoor inside some adobe house in Taos.
Yeah, that's great when you can. I mean, it's one of the things I love about just bartering with people.
Yeah,
like,
that barter thing.
It's just great.
If you can
help me out,
do
I'll
it.
help you out. I mean, it's pretty
and they didn't mind at all. And I do remember borrowing. How much time do we have?
Oh, I think I should probably give you one more question here after we finish up with this one here. But this time has flown. But go ahead.
Real quick, I got to work with Kathleen Chalfant and Harris Yulin at the Lenzik because Joan Tewksbury were doing these stage readings there. See, things like that. Yeah. And we did the Laramie project there, which is incredible. Right. Yeah. And real quick, I told you before we started taping that I was thrown into that to play several characters at last minute because Kent couldn't do it. Kirkpatrick, he was producing that film, so he suggested me, and I got involved. But it was like next week, but it was great. It was a staged reading, and I played 3 or 4 different characters. Great experience.
Yeah,
great experience.
I agree.
And against type.
Yeah,
I wasn't playing the Mexican or the Indian, and
it was. I know
that kind of thing,
I love that experience, and I love too that we're talking about the Laramie project 10 years later, and that was the first. I mean, that was the first performance anyone in the country was seeing that night. So it was literally that feeling
it was a
performing for
simulcast.
People that had never seen it before. There wasn't anyone in the audience that had seen it, and that to me there was something really magical. And that there were theaters all around the country doing it at the same time, and you just felt this.
That's right. It was like a simulcast thing.
Yeah,
and Bob Martin got me involved in that. He was like ran the Lenzik Theater back then, and he'd call me up and ask me if I want to do this stuff, and I was like, yeah, thanks so much for calling.
He got you involved with the Joan Tewksbury project too?
Yes. Yeah. That's how I met Joan. Yeah. She wrote Nashville for Robert Altman, and we became friends.
Wow.
And she used me for other things besides that. She actually used me in a film that she directed. Yeah. And I was an extra, but I asked her, I said, I don't want to do extra work. And she said, but I really want you to do this. And I said, okay, but can I improvise as much as I? And she goes, absolutely. So in that film, you'll see stuff that's not scripted, where I'm using a yo-yo and whatnot. What's he using a yo-yo for? It was just, I was improv-ing. But those are places where you get to learn. Yeah. You learn by doing it live, and that's how I learned, doing these things,
And working with people, just getting to work with great people. I mean, there's just nothing like that.
And then real quick, getting to, I was telling you earlier, I think I did, where I worked on White Sands with Willem Dafoe and Sam Jackson. And Sam Jackson and I hung out all summer long, just hung out. He would call me up and he was sober, and I was drinking NA beer that whole time, or none at all. We had a blast. That's but there were some moments, how Sam Jackson talks, Oh
yeah.
I've had it, with his nut button, snakes on his mutton button playing. And back then he used to yell at me like that all the time, and I didn't know I was going to become famous that way of talking to people, And I remember we had this conversation, and I was all blue about something, and he goes, "What's the matter now?" And I was like, "Oh man, I'm typecast, so much." And that look he gives you, Sam will give you that look, and him being black, he's like, "What do you mean by typecast?" And I go, "Well, I'm always playing the Indian or the Mexican," and Sam gives me that look again, like, "I'm gonna hit you," and he goes, "Well, did you do it well?" And I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "Well, then what the fuck are you talking about?" You get all over my case about it,
Oh man,
about being typecast, mother beep. I have,
Yeah,
to censor,
yeah.
have to censor myself. You mother beep. My son used to censor himself like that. You know.
That is great. Wow, how cool that you got to work with.
Yeah,
him.
you got
And
to
it's
work
great
with
to hear
these
that he's
people.
such a
You know,
good person.
And
Yeah, that's
you know, and I don't know how much that has to do with live theater, but I did learn some lessons from him.
Sure.
You know, just him telling me,
Yeah.
you know, to shut up. You know, and like, what do you think you're going to play?
right.
The white guy? You know, no, you don't look that part. You know, but he did also tell me that he would tell his agent, like when they would say, oh, they would. This is early in his career, and they would say, well, they're not really looking for an African American for that part. And he'd go, well, then let's change that. How about having an African American play that role?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that was, you know,
That's great.
the way he thought. It's
Yeah.
like there was no
Why does
saying, why does that have to matter? Unless it really, really, really has to be that way in the story, you know.
Yeah.
Like when I got the role of the New Mexico State Senator, I forget the name of that film, something like Sudden Impact or something. And I thought I would never get that role as a state senator because I had come off a Western and my hair was long and I was scruffy and I couldn't cut it yet. And because we weren't done, I was still working on that. Walked in there, got the part as state senator. And then when I was working on the job, I asked the director, Robert Kurtzman was his name. I asked him, why, how was it that you got me for this part, you know? And I never thought, oh, wait a minute. No, that's not what he said. When they came to me and said, how does he look? I thought they were going to say, oh, let's cut his hair short and shave it and clean cut. And he looked at me and said, nope, no problem. He goes, just tie his hair back real nice and tight and we'll shave this. And I went, really? And he goes, yeah, why? And I go, I don't know, I thought you were going to want to cut my hair. And he goes, Frederick, it's fiction, and I wrote it. So it was his baby. And he liked that.
Yeah.
You know, why change it? If I'm going to play an American Indian, New Mexican senator, like there was that guy, he was I think a senator, I can't remember his name, also Native American. He had long hair. I forget his name, but a real senator, Montana or something. So anyway, there's that story.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Freddie, this is this has been great.
That went by fast.
Yeah, really. Thanks so much.
I have one question.
Oh, yes.
One question.
Absolutely.
For the world. I went and saw Star Wars just 2 nights ago. I want to know, how come there's no Chicanos in Star Wars?
Good question.
Huh?
Yeah.
We could have some great lines.
Yeah.
You know, some Nahua Aztec lines, you know, in Star Wars, you know.
Right.
There's made up language in that movie. You know, it's been done before, like Eddie Olmos in Blade Runner and he had fictitious language made up of German and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I was just watching it the other day going, how come there's no Mexican Americans in this movie? They're all over L.A.
Yeah.
We got a lot of them to pick from, you know.
Yeah.
It's been done. Star Trek had Robert Beltran and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering.
Right. No, that's a great, yeah. Well, the thing you were talking about is Samuel Jackson, just that question of why can't I play this role? I mean, that's just a great question. Well, let me just ask you just one more to finish off.
Yeah.
I'm always just interested in, is there a particular moment on stage, whether it's when you're on stage performing or rehearsing, are there particular moments where you feel like when a particular thing happens where you feel like this is why I love doing it and this is why I keep going back to doing it? Does my question make sense?
Yeah.
What is that moment or those moments for you?
Well, you know, without it, like, you know, the people always use that word like, well, if it resonates and all that stuff. Well, of course, you know, but when I just feel comfortable up there when I'm doing, when it's right, it's right, you know, and you feel comfortable, you know. And I see it on film sometimes, and I go, wow, that's the shit right there, that 50-50 and everything's working and the writing's great, Yeah. And when you're doing it and you're wondering why you even get paid, you just love it doing it so much, that and when you make people cry,
Yeah.
Seeing my sister cry, when I did that Junie Moon thing, I told her, it's not real. Come on, cut it out, But she cries at weddings. But
you've affected somebody.
When you affect,
you see 'em,
when you, isn't that what theater's about, right? When you, if you can affect or make a change, could make a change, maybe even politically or you know what I mean? Like in the world, if and or with comedy, you can change the world with comedy. You can change the world with theater, and it doesn't have to be bloody or because it's in the writing many times.
Well, Freddy, thanks so much for this conversation, and thank you all very much for joining us. And I'll just this will be posted on our Ironweed Facebook page in the videos section, and we will announce our next Talking Theater Live segment very soon on my Facebook page and on Ironweed. But again, Freddy, thanks so much, and thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Oh, and kudos and thanks to Robert Englund.
Hear, hear. Good night.
Thank you.